A global recession is real and might just be here. We all felt the impact of the pandemic in 2020. It got so bad that businesses shut down and we all had to stay inside. And up until now, we're still feeling the effects of the pandemic. The whole world is yet to get over it. It's so bad that many Americans are still unable to find jobs. Some have been fired from their jobs due to cutbacks by many companies. In March of last year, Amazon laid off 9,000 workers. Meta, the parent company of Facebook, WhatsApp, and Instagram, laid off more than 104,000 workers. Insane numbers, right? Despite all of this, central banks are pumping up interest rates like there's no tomorrow, and they're not planning to slow down anytime soon. Brace yourselves because the economic forecast for 2024 is anything but clear. The International Monetary Fund expects a slowdown from 3.5% in 2022 to 3% in 2023 and a meager 2.9% in 2024. That's way below the usual average growth rate of 3.8% in the past 2 decades, mainly because advanced economies are hitting the brakes hard. But here's where it gets interesting. Despite hiking interest rates like crazy since March 2022, the U.S. economy is still standing strong. The IMF predicts GDP growth of 2.1% this year and 1.5% next year, making the U.S. one of the top performers among developed nations. How is this even possible? In America, the struggle to make ends meet is real and relentless. With living costs skyrocketing, families are feeling the squeeze. Inflation and stagnant wages are a brutal combo, making it tough for regular folks to keep pace with the rising prices of basics like housing, gas, healthcare, and food. It's hitting hard, affecting millions of honest workers who just want a break from all this financial chaos. CEOs, investors, and economists had circled 2023 on their calendars as the year when the American economy would hit a rough patch. The fear was that the U.S. economy would come to a screeching halt because the Federal Reserve was hitting the brakes hard to tame inflation. Businesses would start shedding jobs, and cautious consumers would tighten their purse strings. But here's the twist. The 2023 recession forecast for the U.S. is falling apart, and it's all because the job market is on fire. In a surprising turn of events, hiring picked up speed yet again in 2023, with a whopping 339,000 jobs added in May alone. Not only did this beat the predictions of every major forecaster, but it also outpaced any single month in 2019, which was considered a stellar year for job growth. Economies worldwide are marching to their beat, each with its own pace of progress. But let's face it, the benefits of growth aren't reaching everyone. This rings true for the US and plenty of other nations too. Sure, the advanced economies are looking up compared to some months back. We're seeing growth sprouting in the United States. Even the Euro area is finally starting to see some green shoots, although there's still a long road ahead. And Japan, with its ongoing reform efforts and aggressive policy support, is also finding its footing. But it's a different story for emerging market countries. They were the lifeline during the crisis, keeping the global economy afloat. Now their momentum is tapering off. For some, it might signal a shift towards more stable growth. For others, it's a wake-up call to tackle the imbalances that have left them exposed to recent market chaos. And then you ask yourself, why is there a recession? Why are economies struggling to keep up with the problems of inflation? The main cause of an economic slowdown is not so definite. The truth is, recessions sneak up on us, driven by various factors like shaky consumer trust, sky-high interest rates, a stock market nosedive, or bubbles bursting left and right. If these issues aren't tackled, they can slam the brakes on the economy hard. People often point to a drop in gross domestic product growth as a recession's cause, but it's more like a red alert that one's already begun. By the time GDP figures come out after a quarter, the recession's usually been lurking in the shadows for a good while, quietly wreaking havoc for months. In the world today, many factors have contributed to a global recession. The first factor to look at would be the activities of apex banks in all countries. Central banks around the globe have been on a rampage, hiking interest rates at a pace unseen in years to wrestle inflation under control, and they might not be finished yet. Since late 2021, they've jacked up rates by a whopping 400 basis points on average in advanced economies, and a staggering 650 basis points in emerging markets. While most economies have weathered this aggressive tightening fairly well over the past year, the specter of high core inflation still looms large, particularly in places like the United States and certain parts of Europe. This could mean central banks will have to keep rates elevated for longer than expected. In this climate, the global economy is still on shaking ground. While the acute stress in some banking systems has eased, we're now seeing trouble brewing elsewhere. One red flag is the growing struggle of both individuals and businesses to keep up with their debt payments, known as credit risk. While hiking interest rates is a deliberate move to rein in inflation, there's a danger that borrowers are already teetering on the edge financially, and these higher rates could push them over, sparking a wave of defaults. Rising interest rates are not just a headache for individuals and businesses, they're also putting governments in a tight spot. For frontier and low-income nations, borrowing in major currencies like the euro, yen, US dollar, and UK pound is becoming increasingly challenging as foreign investors demand juicier returns. This year, issuing hard currency bonds has come with steeper coupon rates, meaning higher interest rates. But it's not just low-income countries feeling the pinch. Even advanced economies are feeling the heat, as evidenced by the recent spike in long-term interest rates. And then there's the international crisis at hand. Russia's invasion has plunged millions into poverty and severely damaged Ukraine's economy, although it has not completely obliterated it. At the same time, sanctions are taking a toll on the Russian economy, yet they haven't halted a war that has inflicted financial chaos and personal hardships locally and globally. From the outset, it was evident that Putin's aggression in Ukraine would wreak havoc on the global economy. While the economic repercussions may pale compared to the human suffering and loss of life on the front lines, they pose significant challenges that leaders must urgently address to prevent further suffering, including poverty, food shortages, and soaring living costs. According to Columbia University economics guru Jeffrey Sachs, geopolitical tensions are currently the top threat to companies' profits. In an interview with CNBC, Sachs highlighted how outdated productivity measurements in the U.S. fail to capture the impact of modern technologies like computers and smartphones. He also voiced concerns about the unchecked growth of artificial intelligence, emphasizing the urgent need for tighter regulations in that sector. Sachs emphasized the necessity of easing geopolitical tensions, particularly by negotiating peace in Ukraine. He pointed out that conflicts involving China, Ukraine, and Russia are major contributors to global profit woes. The ongoing trade disputes by the U.S. and China, marked by tariffs, technological rivalry, and espionage allegations, are straining supply chains as the U.S. seeks to disentangle from long-standing relationships with China. The esteemed professor believes that reducing tensions between the U.S. and China would not only relieve global pressure, but also provide much-needed clarity for businesses worldwide. Sachs stressed that fostering a peaceful relationship between these two economic giants would greatly benefit the global economy. Additionally, Sachs delved into the inadequacy of current productivity measures in the U.S., noting that while we live in a service-oriented economy, our metrics primarily focus on the costs rather than the actual flow of services. This oversight, he suggests, hampers our understanding of true productivity levels in the modern economy. Experts believe that if you add all of these together, there's a strong indicator that a recession is truly knocking on the door, and not just in the United States, but the world at large. In their submissions, they believe that some key indicators are already telling us what's coming. One of the evaluators used to arrive at this conclusion includes the ISM Manufacturing PMI. What is this, you ask? Well, the ISM Manufacturing PMI is like a speedometer for the U.S. manufacturing scene. It's all about taking the pulse of the industry every month, asking purchasing managers about stuff like how much they're making, how many new orders are coming in, and if they're hiring or not. While it's not a crystal ball for recessions, it can give us some hints about where the economy is headed. If the PMI dips below 50, it's like a red flag for a slowdown. But if it falls below 45, we might be staring the recession straight in the face. Another tool used by experts is the EPS, or earnings per share growth model. This one predicts how a company's earnings will grow. It's based on the idea that a company's stock price goes hand in hand with its earnings growth. By looking at past earnings trends and projecting them into the future, this model gives us a peek into what's coming down the financial pipeline. Now, while it's not meant to be a recession fortune teller, it can still give us some clues about the economic landscape. If a company's earnings growth starts to slow down, or if the whole market takes a hit, it could be a warning sign of an economic slowdown on the horizon. If this slowdown sticks around for a while, it might even point towards a full-blown recession. But the EPS growth model isn't just about individual companies. It's also a handy tool for sizing up the overall health of the economy. By looking at earnings growth across different industries and sectors, we can get a sense of whether the economy as a whole is thriving or struggling. If earnings growth starts to tank across the board, it could spell trouble for the broader economy. Okay, so we've established that a recession is coming, at least to an extent. The question is, how close is it? What does it bring? Recessions hit businesses hard, big and small. Sales and profits take a hit. Credit tightens up, and bankruptcies loom on the horizon. While the impact varies depending on the type and size of the business, some struggles are pretty predictable. For instance, a small consulting firm might feel the squeeze as clients drag their feet on paying invoices, while a Fortune 500 giant could slash costs by cutting jobs and negotiating better deals with suppliers. Understanding how a recession could shake up your business is crucial for survival. Small businesses in particular often lack the financial cushion and bargaining power to weather the storm. With less cash in hand and fewer assets to back them up, they're not exactly the darlings of lenders during tough times. Even big corporations aren't immune to the recession's bite. In 2020, a whopping 244 of them sought bankruptcy protection, the highest number since 2009. Sectors hit hardest include energy, retail, and consumer services. When revenue and profit take a nosedive, it shows up loud and clear on quarterly earnings reports, often sending share prices plummeting. Bear markets tend to rear their heads during recessions, sometimes even before they officially begin. If profits take a steep dive, companies might have to slash or completely axe shareholder dividends. But don't count big businesses out just yet. They've got more tricks up their sleeves than smaller ones when it comes to fighting off the recession's blows. They can tighten their belts by freezing hiring, cutting pay raises, and resorting to layoffs as a last resort. Scaling back on capital spending, marketing, research, and new product launches is also a fair game. However, these cuts aren't just felt within the company. They ripple out to affect employees and suppliers alike. Unlike big players, small businesses can't just tap into the stock market or issue bonds for a cash infusion. Plus, they don't have the same lobbying power to sway government aid in their favor. That's why small businesses often find themselves teetering on the edge of bankruptcy during recessions. The exception was the COVID-19 recession, where widespread relief measures spared many from going under. Overall, small businesses tend to bear the brunt of recessions, unable to weather the storm as well as their larger counterparts. Recessions are like unwelcome guests that crash the party of ongoing economic growth. Suddenly, businesses of all shapes and sizes are forced to adapt to a sudden drop in demand, while trimming expenses originally meant for expansion. When a recession hits, small businesses often find themselves walking a tightrope with less room for error compared to their larger counterparts. However, amidst the chaos, the most resilient businesses have a chance to shine. As competitors falter and fall, these survivors can seize the opportunity to grab a larger slice of the market. This strategic move not only helps them weather the storm, but also positions them for success once the economy begins to bounce back.